This question appeared on a video that was describing how to copy and paste data from multiple Excel workbooks into one single workbook. And this viewer made a really good point that when you want to transfer data from one block of cells to another, copy and paste is not necessarily the best or most efficient way to do it. So I thought it was worthwhile making a quick video just to describe this alternative technique. I've got a workbook to work with here, all to do with movies, and I'll make this file available for download. I'll stick a link in the description below. There's a blank worksheet called All Movies, and then several other worksheets, each of which contains a list of films made in a particular year. Our aim ultimately in this example is to find the table of data, excluding the headers and the footer row, the total row at the bottom, copy that from each sheet, and then build up a single list of all the films made in all the years. Before we get to that point, I want to describe the basics of the technique first, so I'm going to head to the Developer tab, head to the Visual Basic Editor, and then insert a module into this project and create a quick subroutine called the Basics. I'd actually like to start with a quick reminder of how the basic copy and paste techniques work in Excel VBA. So to demonstrate, we'll refer to a block of cells on one of our yearly worksheets. Let's go for the 2016 sheet, and we'll go for cells A1 to D12. We'll copy those and drop them into cell A1 on the All Movies sheet. As we're going to be pasting stuff into the All Movies sheet quite a lot in this video, let's make sure we clear the contents each time we do that. So the first line of code we're going to write is going to clear the contents and formats of all the cells in the Movies worksheet. I've got a couple of ways to reference that sheet. I've given it a convenient code name, WS Movies. So let's say wsmovies.cells.clear. What I'd then like to do is refer to the range of cells on the 2016 sheet, and again I'm going to use the code name for that, sheet 16, and then I'll say sheet 16 dot range A1 to D12 dot copy. Once I've done that, I've got a couple of ways I could paste the copied data into my movies sheet. A simple way to do it, if I want to paste everything, all the values, all the formats, etc., I can use the destination parameter of the copy method to send the copied information directly to that cell. So the destination parameter is a reference to a range object. In this case, it's going to be wsmovies.range A1. Once I've done that, I'll just restore the VB editor so we can see what's happening in the background in Excel. And if I just run that subroutine, we'll see all of the data gets pasted in, along with all the background colours and font formatting and date formatting there as well. If I wanted more control over how the data gets pasted into the destination cells, then I can separate this single statement into two individual instructions. So we can do a separate copy followed by a separate PasteSpecial. So I'm going to take wsmovies.range A1 down to its own separate line, and then at the end of that instruction refer to the PasteSpecial method. PasteSpecial has a bunch of optional parameters. If I type in a space after that, you can see that the first optional parameter is paste. So for example, if I wanted to paste only the data without the formatting, I could refer to the Excel paste values constant to do exactly that. So PasteSpecial Excel paste values. I can then run the subroutine again, and this time it will paste the information without any formatting, including the background colours, the font formatting, and the date format as well. Now let's look at how we can avoid using copy and paste altogether. For the first example, I want to transfer the contents of one single cell from the 2016 sheet into a cell on the All Movies sheet. So I'm just going to comment out the copy and paste special statements from this subroutine, and then a couple of lines further down I'm going to say wsmovies.range B2 equals sheet 16.range B2. The two cells don't have to be the same cell reference, we can mix and match. The important thing here is I'm referring to just one single cell on each sheet. And when I run that subroutine, we'll see that the contents of cell B2 from sheet 16, Captain America Civil War, appears in the same location on the All Movies sheet. Things work a little differently if I want to reference multiple cells using this technique. Let's copy and paste the A1 to D12 cell reference and pop that into each of the range properties on this line. If I run the subroutine, apparently nothing happens. I end up with a block of blank cells. if I want to make this work, I have to be specific about which property I'm referring to for the range of cells I'm getting my data from. So if I simply add dot value to the end of that range reference, and the end result looks like so. If I run the subroutine now, we'll see that we do indeed get all of the data transferred from the 2016 sheet. Now, it's not necessary to reference the value property of the target range, but if you wanted to make your code look a little more consistent, there is absolutely no harm in referencing the value property. That's perfectly acceptable. If I run that one, it works in exactly the same way. So you'll see it's copied all of the data. It's got the date formats, but it hasn't got the background color or any font formatting from the title row. One other thing that it's important to note is that for the target range, we do need to refer to the entire block of cells. So unlike with the PasteSpecial method or the destination parameter of copy, we can't just reference the top left-hand corner. If I try to say wsmovies.rangeA1.value, with or without the dot value in fact, then this won't work either. If I run that subroutine, I'll only get the value of the top left-hand corner cell from that block on sheet 16. And even if I refer to a completely different cell, if I say let's go for cell C5 for example, if I run the subroutine again, I end up with film ID starting in cell C5. So I've always got to make sure that my target range matches the size of my original source range. Let's just go back so that that says A1 to D12 and run the subroutine again just to get that full block of data back. So now that we know the basics, we can get on with the process of collecting each set of yearly films and building them into a full list on the All Movies sheet. Let's just maximize the VB editor window, and I'm going to create a new subroutine to do this. I'll do this at the top of the module just to save having to scroll down each time. And I'll call this subroutine Build Full List. I need to process the collection of worksheets in the workbook. So to do that, I'm going to declare a variable, dim_ws as worksheet, and that will hold a reference to one worksheet at a time. And it will do that as I process a for each loop. So I'll say for each ws in this workbook dot worksheets. And I'll provide myself with a few blank lines before saying next ws to close off that loop. Now I want to make sure that inside this loop I'm getting the data from each of the yearly sheets, but I don't want to get any data from the WS Movies sheet. Now of course the WS Movies sheet is part of the worksheets collection, so this loop is going to look at it regardless, but I want to make sure that I don't do anything with the movies sheet. So I'm going to write an if statement to exclude it from the copy process. So I'm going to say if not ws is ws movies then, followed by a couple of blank lines, and then say end if. Now just in case that statement isn't clear, what this is asking is it's checking that the worksheet referenced by this variable ws for this particular iteration of the loop is not the same as the WS Movies worksheet. And as long as that's the case, then we can start getting our data from that sheet. Next, we need to work out which block of cells we want to get our data from on each worksheet that this loop will encounter. Just switching back to Excel temporarily, each worksheet might have a different number of rows on it. So 2016 has 11 films, 2015 has only 10, 2014 has only 9. So because there are different numbers of rows on each sheet, we can't get away with just referencing a specific range of cells. The approach we're going to take is to use the current region property. So if I just switch back to 2016, if I refer to cell A1 first and then press Ctrl A on the keyboard, what has just been selected is the equivalent of the current region. So it's the entire block of data to which cell A1 belongs. Now, of course, that includes a couple of rows that we don't want to get. I don't want to get multiple copies of the title row, so I'd like to exclude that from the process. And I don't want to get the total row either. So to exclude those two rows, once we've referred to the current region, we're going to reference or shift that range down by one row. So the region of cells we'll be referring to at that point will be that block. And then we're going to resize that block of cells by -2 rows, so that will end up referring to that block of cells. And providing the structure of each table on each worksheet is the same, that technique will work for every worksheet in the collection. All of this will be immensely easier if we use a variable to capture the reference to that block of cells. So I'm going to declare a new variable. I'm going to call this one source range as range. And then within this if statement, I'm going to say set source range equals ws.range A1. There's our starting point. Then I want to refer to the current region property of that range. So I'll say .current region. Then I want to shift the current region down by 1 row. So I can do that by using the offset property. So I can say offset 1 row down, 0 columns to the right. Then I want to resize that block of cells. So to that selection or that reference, I can refer to the resize property. And I've got two things I can resize, the rows and the columns. The columns are fine, I don't want to resize that. But I do want to reduce the row size to 2 less than the current region of cell A1 on this worksheet. So a little bit awkward, but I'm going to say ws.range A1 .current region .rows .count -2. And I can finally close the round brackets at that point. May have made more sense to split this across a couple of different lines to make it a little bit more readable. So I can do that using a space underscore continuation character just to hopefully make that a little easier to read. We could have used more variables here to make the process a little easier again, but I'm just trying to minimize the number of different statements we have to write. So that selection there, or that section of code there, will refer to the correct block of cells whose contents we want to transfer into our WS Movies sheet. Next, we need to establish where the target range or destination range is going to be on the WS Movies worksheet. This involves two problems. First of all, we have to find the next available blank cell at the bottom of the current list of films. So of course our list is going to grow for each worksheet that we encounter in this loop. Secondly, I need to make sure that the target range has the same dimensions as the source range. It needs to have the same number of rows and number of columns as that range. To solve the first problem, to find the next available blank cell at the end of the list, imagine we'd already pasted one block of data into this all movies sheet. If I refer to cell A1 or A2, or in fact any other cell in this block, and referred to the cell that's at the end of the list in a downwards direction, so I can essentially say from this cell end Excel down, and then offset 1 row further down from there, I will find the bottom of that list, which is great as long as I already have some data in the worksheet. But when I begin, of course, we're going to ensure that this worksheet is completely empty. We'll add that line of code in shortly. So imagine that block of cells wasn't there. If I try to end Excel down from cell A1, it jumps all the way down to the very end of the worksheet. And if I then subsequently try to go 1 row further down from there, I'd cause a runtime error because that row simply doesn't exist. So a better approach, or a simpler approach, one that works and solves that problem, is to go from the very bottom of the worksheet in column A, end Excel up, and offset 1 row further down. So when the worksheet is empty, we'll end up in cell A2. So the first block of cells will be pasted into cell A2, conveniently leaving us with a blank row for our column headers later. And then if I just undo my deletion from earlier on, if I already have some data in this list and I go from the very bottom cell in the worksheet, cell A 1,048,576, end Excel up, offset 1 row further down, it will leave me in the correct position to paste in that next block of data. So that's the approach we're going to take. Let's add in the bit of code that's going to clear the contents of the all movies sheet first. If I switch back to the Visual Basic Editor, and I'm just going to cheat on that one. Actually, I'm just going to copy and paste wsmovies.cells.clear from the previous subroutine into the top of this one. Then I'm going to declare a variable dim target range or destination range, but target is shorter to type, as range. and then we can write the code to establish what block of cells that will be inside this if statement. So let's set our target range variable to be equal to, and then I'll break this line across multiple lines again because it's going to be an equally long line of code to write otherwise. And I want to begin by referring to the bottom cell on the movies worksheet. So wsmovies.range. And then if I know its cell reference, I can just type that straight in. So range A, 1,048,576. And I could close the double quotes and then close the round brackets. Now that's absolutely fine as long as you can guarantee that there are that many rows available. If you happen to be working with legacy workbooks where the number of rows on a worksheet is less than that, this is going to cause a problem. So it might make more sense to avoid referencing that number specifically and have it calculated by referring to the number of rows on that worksheet. So I could say wsmovies.range A and then concatenate wsmovies.rows.count. So that will return the number 1,048,576 and produce the same cell reference. If you preferred not to build a cell reference like that by concatenating things, then you could also refer to the cells property. So rather than range, I could say wsmovies.cells, and then you refer to a cell with the cells property by referring to the row number of that cell, followed by the column number of that cell. So in this case, it would be 1,048,576, 1, which is range A, 1 million, blah, blah, blah. So there we go. There's several different ways to refer to that bottom cell. What I now have to do is end Excel upwards from here. Annoyingly, because I've used the cells property, I no longer get any IntelliSense to help me. With the range property, we would. But I'm going to persevere with the cells property and no IntelliSense. Let's say end XL up, and then offset one row further down from there. So dot offset, one row down, 0 columns to the right. Now I'd like to resize the block of cells from the position I've ended up in. So currently, at this point, that instruction refers to just one single cell. I need to resize it so it has the same dimensions as my source range. So I'm going to say dot resize, and then open some round brackets. And at this point, I'll split my line again, space underscore. And on the next line, I want to resize the number of rows first of all. And I'm going to do that by referring to my source range dot rows dot count, followed by a comma. And then I can refer to the column size by referring once again to source range dot columns dot count. So that variable we declared earlier for the source range really makes this instruction an awful lot easier to write. So I can close the round brackets at that point, and that's my reference to the target range created. Okay, so at this point we're almost there for the core part of the procedure at least. What we need to do now is assign the source range to the target range. So we can simply say target range dot value. Again, because we're using multiple cells, we have to reference the value property for at least the source range. And I think it makes it nice and consistent if we also reference the value property for the target range as well. So target range.value equals source range.value. And having done that, I'm just going to restore the VB editor window. We've got our line of code that will clear the contents of the all movie sheet, so this rogue table here will be deleted. And if I simply run that subroutine, almost instantly, all the worksheets data gets transferred into the all movie sheet. I appreciate we're not working with huge volumes of data on each sheet, but you can hopefully see even from here that the performance of this technique is pretty quick. The data appears almost instantly. So that's the main part of the procedure working quite nicely. All that remains is the tidying up. So for example, getting the column headings, getting the column widths correct so we can read the data properly, maybe applying a bit of basic formatting, but as I say, the core part is working. Let's get the column headings in. Once we've finished processing all of the worksheets, if I maximize the VB editor window again, then after next WS, we could just copy and paste, I suppose, but as the point of this video is how to avoid copy and paste, I'd feel like I was cheating if I did that. But copy and paste would be by far the easiest way to do what we're about to do. And in the real world, that is exactly what I would do. But the point of the video, avoiding copy and paste. So I'm going to make use of my two variables, source range and target range. I'm going to say set source range equals, and then I'm going to pick any of the yearly worksheets. It really doesn't matter which one. They all have the same column headings in them. Just for convenience, I think I'll say sheet 1 dot range A1, comma, sheet 1 dot range A1 dot end Excel to right. Beg pardon, got the wrong property there. End, I'll get there eventually. End Excel to right. Close two sets of parentheses at the end. So what that does is refers to a block of cells whose leftmost cell is cell A1 and whose rightmost cell is whichever cell is at the end of that list in a rightwards direction. Then I'm going to set my target range to be equal to WS movies dot range A1 dot resize, and I don't need to resize the rows, that's the same size, it's one row, but I'll just put in a number 1 just in case I wanted to do that. I could resize the number of rows as we did earlier on, but it's the column size that's important. I want the column size to be the same as source range dot columns dot count, and then close the round brackets. Then once again, all we have to do is say target range dot value equals source range dot value. Okay, so the exact same technique used again, just to get the column headings. Now that I've done that, let's restore down the window again and we'll run it one more time. And this time we'll see that the titles appear right at the end of the procedure, so we can see what column means what. It's a slight shame that we didn't get the formatting copied across. Of course, we only get the values of the cells. If I want to get to the background colour and the font formatting without copy and paste, then I've got a little bit more work to do, but let's give it a quick go just to show you the basic principle. I'm going to say target range dot interior dot colour equals source range dot interior dot colour. Now I know that both target range and source range contain multiple cells, and this is going to work simply because every cell in the source range has the same colour. I'll show you the effect in just a moment when it doesn't. Then I'm likewise going to say target range dot font dot bold equals source range dot font dot bold. I'm glad I didn't change too many other properties of the header row, otherwise I've got a lot more lines of code to write, but you can hopefully see the approach we're taking there. So having done that, if I run that subroutine again, you'll hopefully see this time that we get the titles in there, but they're now formatted in the same way as the source range. As I say, this only works if sheet 1 refers to the 2001 worksheet, so let's head over to the 2001 worksheet there. If any of the background colours of these column headings on the source sheet were different, then the technique falls over somewhat. Let's have a quick look at the results of this. If I run this subroutine, we'll see that the background colour of everything suddenly becomes black. So if you're worried that you might have multiple different coloured cells and you want to maintain a consistent cell colour for your column headings, then you can make sure that you refer to just one single cell in the source range. So find where we've referenced source range.interior.colour, and in here we can say source range.cells, open some round brackets, 1, 1. So the first row and the first column of the source range will refer to that just one single cell. So having done that, we can run the subroutine again, and now we get back to the blue background colour. And probably the final thing I would do is change the column widths on the final all movies sheet so that everything is readable without having to scroll left and right and change column widths manually. So the final thing we'll do is say WS movies dot range A1 dot current region dot entire column dot auto fit. And one final run of that entire procedure just to see the final result. If I run it again, there we go. So hopefully you can see in the background there, everything's the perfect width to read all the text and dates and numeric data. All the formatting has been applied, and we've got all the data in a fairly quick and efficient way, certainly more so than the standard copy and paste techniques. So there we go. That's how you transfer data between cells in Excel without using copy and paste. I think that addresses the original point reasonably well. Thank you for bringing up that point, by the way. IGA67, that was a really useful video, I think, to make. So yeah, carry on making these comments, asking questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.